It's the Raymond Simms Show on the Coliseum Sports Network.
Good morning, everybody, and welcome to the Raymond Simms Show, live on Spreaker.com and on demand on Spreaker and at the Coliseum Sports Network. I'm Raymond Simms, and I'm glad that you are joining me today on this Tuesday. Looking outside of the window here at the Coliseum headquarters in Chicago, it's a rainy day here, as it probably should be. It would very much match the mood if you're a Chicago Bears fan, at least. But otherwise, it's still a good day, at least in my opinion. I'm kind of a fan of rainy days sometimes, at least when I don't go too far from home. It's just something about the gray days. As long as I don't have to go out in them, as long as I'm inside while it's raining, I am all for them. I don't know, it's just something very relaxed and chilled about it. And of course, overcast days during the fall are very par for the course. Then again, if you live somewhere like California, you're probably not used to that, to cloudy days, and I'm also very jealous of you. But I'm glad that you're joining me all the same, wherever you may be in the world. If it is 11 o'clock and you're on the East Coast, or if it's 8 o'clock and you're on the West Coast, or if you're in the very expansive Central Time Zone with me at 10 o'clock, I'm glad that you are here. If you want to participate in this show, because you can, it's an interactive thing. Haven't had much interaction, but it is interactive. You can chat with me at Spreaker.com. If you're catching this on demand, you can comment on any of the topics at the YouTube page. That is youtube.com/user/Coliseum Sportsnet. Or you can hit me up on social media at Simms Coliseum on Twitter, SimmsColiseum.tumblr.com, and then you can also like my Facebook page, which is called Simms Coliseum. I like to keep it simple, you know. This show probably going to be all over the place. I'll give you that much, but it should not be any less fun. Hopefully you'll still enjoy it all the same. It is essentially a football and basketball Tuesday, but the subjects that I cover will actually be fairly far-reaching. Of course, I'm going to talk about the Monday night game that happened last night. I actually ended up watching. Thought I wasn't going to last night or in yesterday's show, but I ended up doing so, and I got a lot out of that. Also, talking about Carson Palmer and the fact that his injury is confirmed to be an ACL and my thoughts on that. And I have more Bear stuff to talk about. You may have heard my diatribe yesterday. If you haven't, you can catch it on demand at Spreaker.com or on Coliseum Sports Network. But I talked a lot of Bears, and I vented a lot about the Bears. And the weekly press conference with head coach Mark Trestman was yesterday. Oh, and I'm in my feelings about that. So I'll talk about that on the football side. On the basketball side, I did something very interesting that I didn't think I would be able to pull off in one night. And I will tell you more about that later. Also, a couple of the games that transpired last night, including a well-known MVP candidate taking on quite possibly a future MVP candidate, and one other MVP, former MVP, back on the floor showing his stuff against a division rival. All of that. Did you get all of that? Don't worry, I will be sure to repeat it ad nauseum. So don't worry if you didn't catch all of that. But the basic idea of it is that it should be a very good show. I will say, though, I was up all night because of what I had alluded to with what I did in terms of my NBA research. So it's going to be interesting. I'll just say that. But let's just start with the basics here. Monday Night Football, the Carolina Panthers and the Philadelphia Eagles facing off in Philly. It was the 3-5-1 Panthers looking to gain some ground, maybe even close in on 500 in the NFC South, because everybody in the NFC South is below 500. The Panthers could get a win and still be a game below 500 and still be in good shape to take the division title. So this could have been a key win for them. At the same time, the Eagles tried to create even more space in the NFC East than what they already have. They come in 6-2, and we come out of this with an Eagles blowout by the final score 45-21, and it really wasn't even that close. For much of the game, it was 45-7, but Cam Newton was able to connect with Kelvin Benjamin twice in the fourth quarter to make the final score what it was. So congratulations to Kelvin Benjamin owners in fantasy, but my condolences to Panthers fans in general. The Eagles came out and they got active on these Panthers. It was a very unbelievable performance in all three phases, on offense, on defense, and special teams, and it's not from the usual suspects, at least in 2014. On the offensive side, it was Darren Sproles and it was Mark Sanchez. Now, Darren Sproles has been known as a very intimidating running back for a few years now, but you would think that if a Philadelphia running back has a very good game, it would be LaShawn McCoy. But no, Darren Sproles is the one. He got one offensive touchdown, one special teams touchdown. Then you have Mark Sanchez coming back from the grave, looking like a god against the Carolina Panthers defense, and he goes out there and has an amazing game. And then on defense, a defense that, for all intents and purposes, is actually pretty middling. In certain categories, it's top 15, but otherwise, it's a pretty middle-of-the-road defense. But they go out there and they play their butts off, and they totally just terrorize Cam Newton out there on the field. They are able to get 3 interceptions and sack him 9 times. It was just a magnificent game, and Chip Kelly is definitely happy with what his team brought out onto the field. When you think Mark Sanchez and the fact that he was the backup to Nick Foles, I'm pretty sure that you guys in Philadelphia probably were hoping that Mark Sanchez would never have to step onto the field. He signed this year kind of as a mentor of sorts to Nick Foles because Mark Sanchez did have good years. In his first 2 years, led the Jets to AFC championships, and then things just started tailing off, and he became the butt of jokes, including the infamous butt fumble. Me personally, I like to just say butt fumble sometimes whenever someone brings up the topic. I like to say it in a very low voice, kind of just like, butt fumble. No, that's not good. Butt fumble. Yeah, something like that. Something to that effect. Maybe a little more volume, but about the same amount of rasp. Something like that. But yeah, that's pretty much what he was known for. That was the lasting image of anybody for regarding Mark Sanchez in a Jets uniform. So he comes to Philadelphia, and you don't think that he's going to play much. He'll just be holding the clipboard a lot. But then all of a sudden, down goes Nick Foles in that game against Houston, and Mark Sanchez steps up to the forefront. And think about it. It was either Mark Sanchez or Matt Barkley. That's not a very good choice to have, at least when you think about it from the outside. And then Mark Sanchez actually goes out on the field and plays. And you see a quarterback that led his team to 2 straight AFC championship games for a reason. Lord only knows why Sanchez tailed off so much in terms of production, but eventually he just needed a change of scenery apparently, and he finds himself in pretty much the perfect situation. Chip Kelly's offense is notorious for helping quarterbacks, being quarterback friendly, I guess you could say, and you don't and I know people Raymond Simms Show here on the Coliseum Sports Network. Just had technical difficulties there. Pardon me for that. Don't know where I left off exactly when things went haywire, so I'm just going to continue my original point, the fact that Mark Sanchez did so well against the Carolina Panthers, and it's a very kind of feel-good story in terms of how bad he fell off with the Jets after starting off so strong, that he's able to come back to the forefront by having such a dominant performance against the Carolina Panthers. So I was in the process of looking up the schedule moving forward for Philadelphia just to confirm whether or not things could get easier or more difficult. Green Bay is their next opponent. They'll be playing at Green Bay, so that will be a much tougher challenge for Mark Sanchez to take on before it kind of tails off, and he'll be hosting Tennessee, and then there's Dallas a couple of times, there's Washington and New York towards the end of the season. There's the Seattle game thrown in there towards the end of the season, and I'm not sure when or if Nick Foles is coming back, but the road for Mark Sanchez to prove that he actually is still good is going to have some hits and misses, because it's still really up in the air as to whether or not he's a good quarterback or if he was just able to surprise the Carolina Panthers, since there's not much film on him with the Eagles since this is his first year there. I also was praising the other two phases of the Philadelphia Eagles attack. They handled business on special teams. Darren Sproles got a special teams touchdown. The running game was also in very good shape on offense. And then on defense, Bradley Fletcher was also able to get a pick six, and that was towards the end of the second quarter. That made it 31-7. That's pretty much when you knew that, the game was pretty much out of hand. So just amazing three phases from the Philadelphia Eagles. They should be very proud of themselves. And at 7-2, they might just be making a statement, kind of like what the Arizona Cardinals are doing over in the NFC West. So the Eagles looking very good right now, but the way that the NFL is going in terms of parity, you got to still bring it every single week. I'm going to take another break here after just getting the connection back here on the live stream. But when I come back, going to talk about the other side, the Carolina Panthers. Does anybody want to win the NFC South? This is the Raymond Simms Show on the Coliseum Sports Network. Back on the Raymond Simms Show here on the Coliseum Sports Network. Just got done talking about the Philadelphia Eagles and how well they did against the Carolina Panthers in their 45-21 victory over the Carolina Panthers. Mark Sanchez looking pretty good out there for a guy who is known for the butt fumble. He's still looking pretty good out there. On the other side, though, Cam Newton just having a rough night. He looked very hurt for much of the game. I'm not sure if he came into the game hurt, but he came out of it hurt, sacked 9 times, and he also threw 3 interceptions. He was able to get 2 touchdowns at the end of the game, but otherwise those were kind of inconsequential when you think about it. He did finish the game going 25 of 40 for 306 yards. The running game struggled. For the most part, the platoon of Jonathan Stewart and D'Angelo Williams just couldn't bring it. There's 24 carries for 67 yards, and that about averages out to somewhere in the 2 or 3 neighborhood. Not good at all. Jonathan Stewart was able to get a touchdown early on, at least, back when the game was close. Stewart's touchdown made it 10-7 in favor of Philadelphia. But otherwise, just not much out of the running game. The receiving game, also somewhat padded by those late touchdowns, looked pretty good. Greg Olsen led the way with 6 receptions for 119 yards. Behind him, Kelvin Benjamin, the rookie, had 3 receptions, 70 yards, and then those 2 touchdowns I keep alluding to. So there were some big receptions on the Carolina side, but they just couldn't convert into the end zone. The Philadelphia defense did a good job of holding things down. One interesting tidbit from last night was that I forgot which interception it was. The one by Kerry Williams, I believe, was the first Eagles interception by a cornerback this season. There were 3 interceptions by Philadelphia, 1 by Bradley Fletcher, which he returned for a touchdown, 1 by Nate Allen, and both of them, Fletcher is a cornerback, Allen is a safety, Kerry Williams a cornerback. He got his first. So the cornerbacks finally coming through. When the secondary was a huge question mark for Philadelphia for much of the season, they at least pull through with a quarterback such as Cam Newton. And I don't want to say I'm a Cam Newton fan. You don't find me riding for him when people tend to deride him and his abilities, but I do think he is a very good quarterback. He was looking pretty good for a decent stretch there. I can't quite pinpoint the stretch, but Carolina was a decent team. I think maybe that was the second half of last season. Cam Newton and the Panthers were looking pretty good there. It's just that they're really struggling this season. You know, every team has injuries. That's a part of it as well. But for the most part, just a good quarterback with some decent weapons. There's some good guys out there on the field. I mean, you saw Greg Olsen's performance, 6 for 119. But it's just not translating into wins, oddly enough, for the Panthers. There was also a time when the Panthers had a very formidable defense. It was a very short time, but I remember last year the Panthers were a sneaky good defensive unit. As of late, they've given up 45 points, 28 points. They were able to hold down Seattle, only giving up 13, but they've also given up 38, 37, 31, 38, 37, 24, and 20. That's going all the way back to the beginning of the season. Actually, they allowed 7 and 14 at the beginning of the season. They allowed 24 in their win against Chicago on October 5th, and that was the last time that the Panthers have won a game. So the defense just not as strong as it was for that short period in 2013. And they definitely weren't strong last night. Because on the other side of this, while I was praising Mark Sanchez, at the same token, Carolina fans have to ask themselves, you give up that many yards to Mark Sanchez? You know, Mark Sanchez is still one of those names that you say with like squinted eyes, and if you wrote out the word, it would be in italics. He's still at that level, and you give up 332 yards through the air. If it's any consolation, the rushing defense from Carolina was still very strong. Only allowed 37 yards on 23 carries. Just not much on the ground, I guess you could say, for either side. Carolina actually did a little better. I did notice, comparing the stats after last night, Carolina led in a lot of different categories, or did better in a lot of different categories. For instance, Carolina had more first downs than Philadelphia, 21-17. Things like more rushing yards, 102-37. Fewer penalties, just one fewer penalty. But some of those things are inconsequential. Some of those things were picked up in garbage time. And then because the real key thing that you just have to keep in mind, that you really just look at, is the turnover margin. And that kind of tells the whole story. 5 turnovers for Carolina, none for Philadelphia. Those are really the ones that matter. Being here in Chicago, I think it was Lovie Smith who pointed out that if your turnover margin is like, if you get like one more turnover if you force one more turnover than your opponent, you should be in good shape to win. And 2 more than your opponent is just, you should just be coasting your way to victory. So when you have a +5 turnover margin like the Philadelphia Eagles do, you better believe that they're in very good shape to get the victory. Now, you do wonder what that means for Carolina. Well, not much, actually, because as atrocious as their record is, 3-6-1, they're still very much in contention to take the division. You just wonder if Cam Newton's going to be under center for the time being. Now, I haven't heard anything out of the Carolina camp to say that he won't play moving forward. The next games coming up are against Atlanta, followed by a bye, and then they start off coming out of the bye week with 2 straight road games at Minnesota and at New Orleans. But he was really hurt. He was really hobbling out there, and I guess you could say that kind of contributed to his performance out there on the field. It was very worrisome to just see him hobbling out there and then just constantly getting pounded. I know that the mandate was to keep him in the pocket as much as possible. You don't want him running around and getting hurt. But then he was in the pocket against a very flimsy offensive line holding him up, and he was still getting pounded. Yeah, I'm pretty sure that if he was able to escape, or had the holes to escape thanks to his offensive line, that he probably would have been in better shape coming out of this game. The backup apparently for Carolina is Derek Anderson, so Panthers fans should be very afraid, and it's probably going to be one of those pick your poison type of predicaments. It's like, which one do you want to do here? Do you want a hobbled, broken Cam Newton, or do you want a healthy Derek Anderson? Because Derek Anderson hasn't played in a while, but seeing how Mark Sanchez did in this game against Carolina, you never know what Derek Anderson could bring you. So that'll be something to think about in Charlotte over the next week, and then they go into the bye week. They can kind of collect themselves, and even though they're in bad shape, they could very much make a run for the NFC South title. There's still hope, and there's still a very, very good chance for the Panthers to take the NFC South. But that's enough about Monday Night Football, but I'm not done with football. I got some venting to do on the other side of this break. It's the Raymond Simms Show on Spreaker.com and the Coliseum Sports Network. Welcome back to the Raymond Simms Show, bottom of the hour here, 11:30 out east, 10:30 here at the Coliseum headquarters in Chicago, 8:30 on the West Coast. So I hope that you're enjoying this so far. If you want to interact with me, you can chat with me on Spreaker.com, or you can @ me on Twitter. I'm trying to keep the Twitter tab open, trying to keep track here. I see I got at least one notification, so I'm watching. The hawk eyes are keeping track of my timeline here. That's on Twitter, but also be sure to subscribe to the Coliseum Sports Network on YouTube. Be sure to like the Facebook page, and then you can go over on Tumblr, simscoliseum.tumblr.com. You can reblog just all the pictures that I reblog from other people. It's a great reblogging loop. As a matter of fact, there was a really cool picture of Steve Nash taking on Mike Bibby back when Nash was with the Mavericks and Bibby was with the Vancouver Grizzlies. So that's a pretty dope picture. You can go over to Tumblr if you got an account, and you can reblog it. You can put it on your page, and people can see how dope that picture truly is, and they can think that you were the one that came up with it. So that's just a suggestion for me. If you're a old person that's not up on Tumblr, that's fine too, but you're missing out on awesomeness. Just got done talking about the Monday Night Football game that I didn't think I was going to watch, but then did, and then got a lot out of for both sides. So now I'm going to continue with my football topic here for the rest of the hour, and I'm looking at my time. I'm trying to see how much time I got to go in on what I want to talk about here. And it is, of course, the Chicago Bears. Now, as I do this show and as I continue to do this show, I want this to be a national topic kind of show that touches on the major topics in football, in basketball, and in baseball when that's back in season. I miss baseball so much. I want to be sure that it's national topics that I focus on, but come on, I'm here in Chicago. I'm experiencing sports in Chicago, so I have opinions on those sorts of things. If I move around, I'll probably have a different perspective. If I move to a place that probably doesn't have as fervent of a fan base, or if I move somewhere that doesn't have a professional franchise, like if I end up like in Omaha or something, maybe my what I end up covering and venting about in certain segments may be different. I guess in that case, it would be Cornhusker football. And before I go into the Bears, I do want to have a quick aside about the Cornhusker fan base. It's very interesting that so many people are angry at Bo Pelini, even though the Cornhuskers have been perennial bowl-bound team. Now, I guess there is kind of cause for concern that even though Nebraska's leading is one of the top teams in the Big Ten, the Big Ten is really down this year. So maybe there's a cause for concern now and a reason to complain. But in these past years, I always found it comical. I don't know. I guess Tom Osborne just spoiled all of us Cornhuskers. But now about the Bears. Yesterday I discussed the 55-14 loss that the Chicago Bears faced in front of everybody, the pantsing that they took on Sunday Night Football and NBC. We ended up as just another one of these teams that have been blown out in prime time. We were the Carolina Panthers on Sunday night. We were the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Just a long list of teams that have endured blowouts and have been on the wrong end all season. The Bears joined that list. And it's not... I mean, after a blowout, especially one of those proportions, it can be very taxing on a fan base, very depressing, just in a vacuum, that one big loss. But, teams can bounce back and teams kind of power through where they have better performances the next time around. But this was not like any other blowout. Like, literally, statistically, not like any other blowout. Because in their prior game, they also gave up 50 points. They scored 25, but they gave up over 50. And it was the first time in NFL history that somebody has given up 50 points or more in 2 consecutive games since a team that is not around anymore did it way back in the earliest of days in the NFL. So basically no active team, no team that is still operating in the National Football League has ever done what the Bears just did over the past 3 weeks because there was a bye week in between. And so the pain the frustration that is felt by this fan base that I have heard on sports talk radio, that I have seen on some of the sports news shows here, or that, heck, you can just check on Twitter. Just type in Bears on your Twitter search and you'll get a good idea of how people are feeling, is kind of unmatched compared to what other teams have gone through. I'm sure Tampa was hurt after that Thursday night beatdown by the Falcons, but they didn't end up doing it again the next game. But here are the Bears, and they give up 50 twice. And so players and coaches and management are rightfully being called to the carpet on the fact that they've given up over 100 points over the past 3 weeks. And you want what you want in terms of a response from your team. If it is your team, and I'm sure if you're somebody like a Packers fan, or if you're a fan of another team that is leading the division, or say if you're the Broncos, who have been perennially good for the most part for the better part of a few years now, you're like, I can't imagine that. My team is too awesome. Well, if your team is so awesome that you can't think it through, then sit this one out for just a couple of minutes. But for the rest of us, we'll kind of play imaginary here and think about the type of response that you want out of your management and your team when you suffer two historically bad losses, or two big losses that combined are historically bad. You want accountability. You want players and coaches to take responsibility for what they did. You want them to train even harder than they have ever trained before. You want changes in terms of the scheme and what they are running. You want anger right after what happened, but you want optimism, and you want proof that change is being made towards the end of the week leading up to the next game. I don't think that's what we're getting here in Chicago. Not what we're getting at all. It's very interesting because, like I said yesterday, I don't know if any other teams are like this, but a lot of the players on the Chicago Bears do a lot of media stuff during the week. Brandon Marshall does 2 different shows on 2 different mediums. He does a television show and he does a radio show, which he did yesterday on one of the stations here. Robbie Gould calls into one of the stations here. Jay Cutler is supposed to do a show on the same radio station that Brandon Marshall does his show on. I think he does it on Tuesdays. Kyle Long has filled in for him before. John Bostic, I just saw him doing a segment about the loss yesterday, and he's on defense. He's on the side that gave up the 100 points. A lot of guys do a lot of talking, and they have to go through a lot. And I've heard a lot of nothing. But I haven't heard any more nothing, if that makes any sense, than out of the man in charge, Mark Trestman. He had his weekly press conference yesterday, and if you want accountability and you want proof of changes and you want a change in game plan and you want them to move from frustration and anger and understanding that they need to do better to optimism that they will do better, well, apparently Mark Trestman just skipped straight to optimism without really evaluating what went wrong, or at least that's how it sounded. You can't quite read a person's mind, but heck if we don't try in the world of sports radio. And to a lot of people, fans and talking heads alike, it seemed like he was delusional. Like he didn't really take inventory on what happened. He said things such as that he wasn't going to sugarcoat what happened, but then in the press conference, he sugarcoated a lot of things that happened. He said that he's been saying that the team has had very good practices as of late and that they've looked very good in practice, and yet, like I said, they haven't scored a lot of points. I think it's 35 to 100 plus. Not good, but apparently in practice they've looked great. It just seems like Mark Trestman is trying to lie to us, or he is out of touch. And neither of those things are things that I would be happy with, because if he is out of touch with what he is doing, then it's very clear that this Canadian football head coach is way in over his head. That he came down from Canada, and I believed in him because he won a Grey Cup with Montreal. So I thought, you bring some of those same principles. I thought, why not? What's the worst that could happen? Well, this. And he comes in and he has this philosophy that apparently these players are not buying into. And yet in his mind, he's thinking everything's going to be great. Everything's going to turn around. My way is still great, except things are getting a lot worse. Or he does understand. He has very good understanding of what happened. And he said he watched the tape, but then the stuff he said kind of felt like it canceled it out, or like he was still like it was over his head, or he was delusional about it. Like, did you watch the same tape that we did? You shouldn't be saying these positive things if you saw the same tape we did. But if he does understand how bad things are, and yet he thinks that he can assuage our fears and frustration and concerns by just saying that everything is great, that everything is fine, then that is insulting to any person's intelligence. And you don't want to do that to a fan base, especially a diehard fan base that has endured a lot more losing than winning over the past 25 years. Or at least mediocrity. They've been to the playoffs a handful of times, but there's been a lot of mediocrity in my lifetime with the Chicago Bears, which it pretty much encompasses the last 2 decades of change. So he's insulting our intelligence because he thinks we're stupid, and he thinks that we're going to be just fine with him saying that everything is fine when clearly everything isn't fine. But the one thing that bothered me, and really is just the thing that bothered me the most out of all of this, is the fact that nothing is being done. And it's not like I didn't see it coming. During the game, while Aaron Rodgers and then Matt Flynn and the Green Bay Packers were running roughshod all over the Bears, I had a feeling that the Bears were not going to do anything in terms of personnel changes regarding the Chicago Bears, despite the fact that they were just so awful out there on the field. There have been bad teams over the years. We've been joking about the Raiders and Jaguars for years, and then every other team that's had a down year, we've made jokes about them and how bad they've been. The Bears have had their bad years I just referred to that. They had years of mediocrity, so they were bad. They had their bad years, but never this bad. Like, even the Jaguars are like, geez, you gave up that many points? Come on, man, tone it down. Like, that's how bad this is. And yet nothing is changing. And yet I knew that nothing was going to change. So it is a bit of a surprise that I am even more ticked off to actually hear them say that there were going to be no personnel changes made after enduring these past 2 losses. So I'm kind of just like, okay, fine. You go out there and you go suck at football. Now, while I'm saying all of this, I do understand that Minnesota is the next opponent for Chicago. And it's at Soldier Field. So they have a home game. They haven't won a home game this season, but Minnesota is they play hard, but they aren't a very good team. They just aren't. And they're missing one of their key running backs, and they have a rookie quarterback. So this could be a very winnable game. So there's a good chance that the Bears could win, and they're going to be Bears fans, that are going to go from just total anger, that are just going to be so happy and just get extra high and happy about the fact that the Bears were able to turn things around. Not me. The only way that I am going to change from frustration to some sort of relief about the Chicago Bears is if they win out. They have to win out. They have to win the rest of these games. They have to go undefeated. Jay Cutler has to stop moping and just turn it on and just be an amazing quarterback just the rest of the way. You know, the type of quarterback that everybody thought he was, but he decided not to be, and he doesn't seem to care because he always has that careless face. He's just going to have to be so unbelievable over the rest of the season. Otherwise, I mean, it's kind of worthless, and a Minnesota win would be a fluke. I don't care by how much. Like, maybe if it was 70 to 20, I would be amazed. But I'm done. Like, I'm done getting excited about the Bears for the season. I'm all set with that. That doesn't mean that I'm not going to watch games. I'm still going to, watch games. I'll probably still talk about them on here. But, like, my hopes are shot because management doesn't seem to care. And Mark Trestman is in over his head and is probably more delusional. Like I was saying, either he's delusional or insulting my intelligence, but I'm pretty sure it's more the former, that he's just delusional, that he thinks what he's doing is working. And the players don't care, and they have clearly checked out except like two people, which are Robbie Gould and Brandon Marshall. And then Matt Forte, he doesn't talk much anyways. He probably cares too. But that's about it. Not done just yet, but I'm going to take a break before I get into some other people on the Bears that kind of are grinding my gears, including one veteran player who should really be acting like a veteran instead of what he's acting like right now. It's the Raymond Simms Show on Spreaker.com and the Coliseum Sports Network. Back on the Raymond Simms Show here on the Coliseum Sports Network. I just got done talking about the first part of how I feel about the Chicago Bears organization. Just something very near and dear to my heart. Maybe not as close as some of the other teams, but still, there's a spot in there, man. I came to like this. I didn't grow up liking football. Like at a very young age, I didn't really know what was going on. Whenever when I was young, I was usually at church while football was going on. But then on days where football would be on, all I saw were like guys would run into each other and then they'd stand around a lot. And then there'd be like stats with like the guy's name. I had no clue what was happening. I didn't really catch on. And I grew up in Chiefs territory, for if that's worth anything. I think were the Chiefs decent during the 90s? I don't quite recall. I know there was an Elvis Grbac guy who threw a lot. I know, was it Steve Young or Joe Montana? One of them was there for like a year or two. But otherwise, yeah, no, completely lost on whatever was happening in football in the 90s. But I moved to Chicago in 2001, and being in Chicago and going to school like during the week, people would talk about what happened with the Bears on, on Sunday. So it was Monday. So people were talking about that. So I started picking up, hey, this is what's happening with the Bears. I also happened to fall into watching a fair amount of like the news during that time, because it just happened to be on in the house. So I would see a lot of Bears highlights, and so I would follow the team. So that's how I fell into the Bears once I moved here, closer to family and stuff. So then I eventually just fell into being a Bears fan. I'm sure that there's a lot of you out there that kind of fall into that same sort of predicament. Maybe not in the exact way, but it's kind of the same. You grow up and your family's a fan of a team, and that's how you fall into it. That's the same thing that happened with me with the White Sox. So the Bears are kind of an inherited thing, but it's still very close to me. I've inherited to the point where I care what is happening, and I, in addition to a lot of Bears fans out there, are not happy with what is going on. The person that I alluded to, that is out here, that just out here being really flagrant and is not playing up to his abilities, is Lance Briggs, starting linebacker. I said that like I was in a courtroom and I was pointing out who like a main suspect was, and it's like, yeah, and the man, he was really evil and he did this. Is he in the room right now? Yes, he is. Lance Briggs. And everybody gasps. That's kind of how I felt like saying his name. Starting linebacker for the Chicago Bears. He has been with the team for a while, and he was usually paired with the amazing Brian Urlacher over these years. Well, contract issues happened such that Brian Urlacher did not re-sign with the team, or the team rather chose not to sign him, and Brian Urlacher didn't want to be anything else but a Bear, so he ended up retiring, and now he went home and became a family man. And I think he's still doing an analysis on Fox Sports 1. I'm not sure. I think they said he gave it up or he scaled back or something like that. So he's off doing other stuff now. That leaves Lance Briggs. He is the last holdover from a bygone era of 2000s Bears teams that were all right. There was some good. There was some bad. It was a roller coaster ride most of the way. Wasn't historic teams. I'm not talking about Mike Singletary leaving or anything like that. These teams were good. There was some good. There was some bad. There was that Super Bowl year. That happened. But Lance Briggs was a big part of that over the course of the 2000s. And now he's still here in body only, in flesh only, really, because his mind is clearly not in the right place. For instance, at the beginning of the season, Mark Trestman let him go out to California to open a restaurant of his that he's opening up out there. Elk Grove, California. Is that Sacramento area or is that Bay Area? I think that's Sacramento. He went out there. He opened a restaurant. And there were some people that had a problem with that. I was like, come on. He's just going out there. He'll be ready to go. And no, his production has not matched his ability at all. If the restaurant thing was an isolated incident and then he goes out and he's just playing out of his mind, then you could overlook what he did back at the beginning of the season. But no, he goes out to California, opens his restaurant, then comes out and he pretty much plays lackluster. For instance, he has 18 solo tackles, 7 assisted tackles, 1 interception, no sacks to his name, and he only forced a fumble so far this year that was not recovered, or that he didn't recover himself. That's all he's done. That's it. And the other thing, not just the restaurant thing, because I wouldn't whine about that necessarily, is his comments over the past couple of weeks. He has admitted to not being all completely there. For instance, in practice, or like in film sessions, he's not all there. He's daydreaming about stuff, which can be understandable depending on what they're covering. But in terms of the evidence against him and his commitment to being a football player, that's not looking good for him to be daydreaming during film session, especially when you're on a defense that's given up 100 points plus in the past 3 weeks. Now's not the time to be daydreaming. And then also, he pointed out the fact that this game that this Packers game that just came to pass would probably be his last one in a Bears uniform. That was the stipulation he made. Was this his last one in a Bears uniform? Like, what the heck is that supposed to mean? That you aren't committed to staying with this team? I guess that could open up a rabbit hole of, if he's thinking that he's not coming back to the Bears, but he's still interested in playing football, what does that mean about the rest of the players on this team? But I'm not going to go down that rabbit hole right now because I'm focusing on Lance Briggs right now. The fact that he is openly opining that this is his last Packers game as a Bear, the fact that he is openly daydreaming during film session when he should be looking at every single cell of video and should not be daydreaming, and the fact that he would rather open a restaurant instead of attend the first day of practice to help this team win really shows me that he is a waste of space at weak side linebacker. The player behind him on defense at the weak side linebacker position is Kasim Green, and then behind him is Dede Lattimore. I'm sure that Kasim and Dede would be more than happy to take Lance Briggs' spot so he can go run his restaurant, or he can go daydream about butterflies or whatever at his house, or he can go and play in some other uniform, because we don't need that right now. He is a veteran, and he needs to round up this team that is crumbling and giving up a bunch of points every single game to teams that they should not be giving up that many points to, no matter how good their quarterbacks are. They're out there looking like TCU's defense. They're looking like a Big 12 defense right now, and it's embarrassing, especially at the professional level. And the guy who is supposed to be the pillar is about as shaky and on quicksand as any other pillar on this team. He is a waste of space. He is a waste of a 53-man roster spot. And that leads me to my final conclusion about the Bears. Outside of fire everyone, which refers to firing everybody in the front office, not everyone in the front office. I'm sure that the secretary outside of the GM's office is a very nice person and does a very diligent job. She can stay. Everybody else has to go. And there have been a lot of names that have flown around, and it's been kind of a who's who of who needs to go. If you've been listening to sports talk radio in Chicago, or if you live outside of town and you've been listening online, which isn't that a beautiful thing, online sports radio? So you've heard names fly around like Phil Emery and Michael McCaskey and Ted Phillips, and just names just flying everywhere. All of them, just yes to all. I clicked that radio button, just yes to all. And then also, so that fire everyone mode, everyone in the front office, because everybody's messing up. The head coach needs to go. The defensive coordinator especially needs to go. Probably didn't need to be hired in the first place. Defensive coordinator I'm referring to is Mel Tucker. He is our defensive coordinator in Chicago. He came over from Jacksonville, who, as you may know, was one of the worst defenses in the NFL when he was there. Still is now, so not too much of a difference. But it wasn't this bad, and he is a reason for this. He needs to go as well. But the main point I'm getting to here before I run up against my time is that the Bears need to completely 76 the roster. I know the term is 86, but no, 76 the roster. And I'm kind of mixing sports metaphors here intentionally because I'm about to move into basketball after the break. You got to 76 this operation. Just get rid of all the contracts. I don't care how much veteran that they are. Just everybody, even the guys I like. Just get rid of everyone. I remember I was on the bandwagon to pay Matt Forte. I was like, pay the man. # pay the man. Let him go off to greener pastures to a team that could win because he deserves it. You know, Brandon Marshall has really turned his life around. I think he deserves to go play, for somebody else. Alshon Jeffrey, he's on my fantasy team, so I need him to be with a competent quarterback. Jay Cutler can go back to Santa Claus and he can mope all he wants or, do whatever he does and not care because he's too cool to do that. Lance Briggs can go deal with his restaurant all he wants. Everybody else can just go. Shea McClellan wasn't working out anyways. Chris Conte was blowing coverage. He's actually improved over the course of the season, but he had an injury not too long ago. Just bring in the rookies, man. Just let them develop. Bring in the rookies. Let them learn their way under a new coach. Let them struggle. And maybe we can get some good draft picks so that we can build ourselves up into a competent team that doesn't give up this many points and isn't this historically bad and then doesn't care about it. That's my opinion. I'm on the Philadelphia 76ers method of planning with this team as far as I'm concerned, because this isn't going to go anywhere. But unfortunately, all of my 76 team just seems like wishful thinking, because it seems like the front office and the coaching staff are so incredibly delusional and the players are so totally checked out that nothing is going to happen. And this team is probably on a very good verge of ending the year 3-13. But that's my opinion on the Bears. Probably not the last of it, but it's enough of it for today. So I'm going to move into basketball after another quick break here. It's the Raymond Simms Show on Spreaker.com and the Coliseum Sports Network. Top of hour number 2 here on the Raymond Simms Show on the Coliseum Sports Network. If you are still here, I thank you, because if you are outside of the Chicago area, that probably was rough to listen to. But at the same time, if you're from outside of the Chicago area and you're not a Bears fan, maybe you could relate with the direction of your management or how your team is going. You probably want the whole thing blown up too. So hopefully you were able to at least relate to it and maybe apply it to what you want from your team, because at the end of the day, even though sports are not in any way really important, you just want to be entertained and you want the team that you ride for to do the best that they can. And at least in my city and my team that I ride for, they are not doing their best, and they're not putting their best foot forward out here, and it's bothering me a lot. It's bothering me a lot. One of the things I actually left out about the topic was the fact of, is my fandom on the line? Because, of course, in bad stretches, there's a lot of people. You'll hear the season ticket holder who gave up their season tickets. They were going for 25 years, but they gave up their tickets. There's a lot of that going on. There's a lot of people who are just done on the season. There's a lot of guys' mothers who have taken down the team flag that they have outside of the house all the time because they're just done with the season and done with the direction of the team. I'm not going to jump ship. Not to say, like, because I'm a real fan or anything, because I think the whole real fan thing is really stupid. That's a whole other topic for another day. But just the fact that this, I've fallen into this. I've inherited this team for all the good and for all of the bad. And even though these are dark times, and it's just been 3 weeks, there are teams that are historically bad that have dealt with much longer, with pain for much longer, sustaining pain for much longer. But, hey, it can get better. And Jay Cutler's only under contract for 2 more years. I mean, it can't get much worse, right? Right? The other NFL topic I meant to cover during that last hour, but of course, rant, was Carson Palmer's ACL. It was believed to have been a torn ACL when he injured himself in the game in their win over St. Louis. It has been confirmed after he had an MRI yesterday, and I just want to say that I feel bad for him. I hope that he has a speedy recovery. I hope he comes back because he was doing so well for the Cinderella story that has been the Arizona Cardinals, and I really wanted Carson Palmer to kind of restore himself as an NFL quarterback and help this team make a big run in the playoffs. He will not be able to do that. Drew Stanton will come up in his stead, but the way that the team is playing, they might not miss a step. You never know. It could go either way here in this NFL. But hopefully Carson Palmer has a speedy recovery and he can come back and do good things for the Cardinals in 2015. But on the bright side, at least he's paid. I'm sure he wants to go out there and play football and he'd play it for free. But, while you're sitting at home, while you're doing therapy, you'll have some money to buy stuff. So, as Daniel Tosh once said, money can't buy you happiness, but you never seen a sad person on a jet ski, have you? Nah, you haven't. Moving into basketball now, I want to tell you about what I did last night. No, don't change the channel. It's not bad. It's not weird. Well, it is weird, but not in the weird that you think it is. Last night, I decided, you know what? I'm fairly caught up on the NBA and all of its happenings. Like, I know what's going on. You've heard me talking about the NBA. You're probably thinking when you're listening, hey, he's fairly well-versed in what he's talking about. He's not a complete idiot. But I felt that, you know what? You can always go the extra mile in your research. And speaking of basketball research, I do want to do a shameless plug here before I forget. This coming Friday, the college basketball preview, going to be covering top 25 teams, going to be talking about the major teams, the mid-major teams. All that is happening on Friday. Stay tuned for that. But in terms of my pro basketball research, I wanted to go the extra mile. So what I did last night, while everybody else was sleeping, was I watched the highlights on NBA.com of every NBA game from opening night up until last night. All of them. All the little 2 to 3 minute clips of every game that has happened so far. And I have no regrets. And if you watched We Are the Millers, yes, I spelled no regrets correctly. Regrets, not like the guy did. I come out of it very proud of myself. Granted, it's highlights. You cannot get a lot out of it, but at least I have a basic understanding. I have confirmed stuff that I had already known about the first 2 weeks of this season. Thank goodness I did it. I'll tell you this much. Thank goodness I did it now at this juncture in the season instead of sitting there in February like, hey, maybe I should go ahead and watch all the highlights. I would not have done a show on this day or on that hypothetical day because I would still be I'd probably be asleep, but then I would also go ahead and still be watching highlights. But I was up all night, went ahead and watched it, and I got a lot out of it. It really just confirmed to me just how beautiful of a sport basketball can be. Just so much athleticism and just so many amazing plays. Of course, since they're highlights, there wasn't like any team that was like completely boring. I guess the Pacers, they didn't do much for me. But I think for the most part, every team had at least a player that did something like really cool and really amazing. Like even teams like the Milwaukee Bucks, you got Jabari Parker as a rookie out there. He made some plays. And Giannis Antetokounmpo, who I kept calling during the NBA preview, I kept calling him Giannis. I'm sorry, Giannis, I had no idea that the G is pronounced like a Y. But Giannis Antetokounmpo, he was out there beasting. He had some serious throwdowns. That man's just long. He's lanky for no reason. He had some great plays. But there are 3 players in particular that really stuck out at me in terms of just all the highlight plays that they had that just had me going, man, that is just amazing. The first one's Anthony Davis. Of course, he's a big man, So he's just running through. He's dunking on everybody. Every time he goes to the rack, he's going big to the rack. It was amazing just seeing him play. And I could just see from the big plays that they, of course, were showing in these highlights that, yeah, Anthony Davis definitely has the tools that he could eventually become an MVP at some point very, very, very soon. And also, those alternate red Pelicans uniforms that they're wearing this year, those look very snazzy. Those look very awesome. Also, that I learned from the New Orleans highlights, thank goodness Eric Gordon is okay. Like, usually, about nowish, he would be going down with an injury. And let me knock on the table here because I don't want him to get hurt. But, you know, Eric Gordon, Derrick Rose, they all make me nervous when they fall on the ground. So, Eric Gordon, he's still out there. He's still contributing. Another player that really just wowed me in the highlights, John Wall. I told you not too long ago, I don't even remember which day. All these days run together for me when I'm doing my talking here on this show. John Wall, I believed in him from the start. I know he had a rough start to his career. He had injury setback there. He's had some knucklehead teammates, but he's turned it around. He's become a very important part to the Washington Wizards and their attempt to win the Eastern Conference Championship. I remember what it was. It was when I was recapping the Washington-Indiana game last Wednesday. That's when I was talking about it, when I gave my whole spiel about John Wall. Well, let me tell you, he still looked good in all of those highlights. He was out there showing out. He is somebody that is willing to lead his team. He knows when he wants to put the game in his hands, and he is not afraid to do it. That man is not afraid of the spotlight. He has all the confidence in the world, and it was very impressive. It would just be highlights where he has the ball, he's dribbling on the perimeter, he's setting up, and then boom, he just darts straight to the rim. And either he's drawing a foul or he's weaving through defenders. It was really a sight to see. And that just was that was one of my favorite players out there. But the one player that just I was completely outdone in these highlights, all of them that I watched, all the games up to this point, Steph Curry. He is the NBA highlight MVP early on here in the season because LeBron James hasn't completely, gotten it going yet. But for now, Steph Curry just seems like if Golden State can get very far in the postseason, Curry's probably going to be in the talk for MVP because he's out there taking control of games. We've known all the talent and the tools that he's had, that he's able to dribble the ball, he has great ball security, that he's able to shoot the three very well, that he's able to attack the basket very well. But to see all those combined in packaged form all at once in the course of about 3.5 hours, to just see the work that Steph Curry does for his team and to just see some of the plays that he makes, my jaw was on the floor. I'm just amazed at what he can do, and he is part of the reason that the Golden State Warriors are so much fun to watch, not just in highlight form, but whenever you turn on a Warriors game or whenever you catch a Warriors game on NBA TV, he is just out there doing work, and he's definitely becoming one of the next superstars if he isn't considered one in your eyes already. So Steph Curry, he definitely moved his way into one of my favorite players, but of course John Wall is up there as 2, and then Derrick Rose is of course number 1 because I'm a Bulls fan and he's the best player on the Bulls. So I gotta have my number 1 out for number 1, Derrick Rose. But Steph Curry is just absolutely phenomenal out there, and John Wall also great in his own right. Anthony Davis is very good. It's been exciting to watch him. Two other entities that excited me very much. Kobe, as inefficient as he is, and he has been for a while, you know how he goes, puts up a lot of points on a lot of shots. So, he's getting a point per shot. He's inefficient, but man, is he good. He knows how to work his way into a good shot. You're not going to stop him. You're going to have a hard time stopping him. You could drape him all you want on defense. He's probably still going to find a way to score. I wasn't sure, I'll be honest, and I wasn't trying to denigrate Kobe and his abilities, but I wasn't sure what he had coming off of the injury. I knew that he would still try to do the same things he did, but I figured that he would probably be somewhat limited. No, no, he's still out there, he's still doing those amazing Kobe moves, at an age that I don't even remember what he is. Is he 38 at this point? Is he 38 yet? He's up there, and he's still doing some amazing things for the Lakers. Now, his team isn't doing well, and I've talked about that before, but just in terms of pure talent and what he can bring, color me impressed, because he's still out there doing it. Kobe's still doing work. You guys remember that film, right? Was it Spike Lee directed it? It was a short film for ESPN, and it was about Kobe. It was just him playing the Spurs and just following him around. I need to see if that's on YouTube or something. Go ahead, check that out. I'm sure I'll see a lot of the same moves that I saw in those highlights. And then the other team that excites me is the Phoenix Suns. I used to be a Suns fan back in those short Jason Kidd days. I didn't realize how short of a tenure he had in Phoenix. But, I was a little guy. I just wanted him to make the playoffs that last year of the Barkley jerseys that they had. And then I went to a game when they changed into the new uniforms. So, but, the Suns, during the D'Antoni era, I wanted them to do very well too, but I wasn't as into them as before. And so I've kind of removed myself from being a Suns fan. Just, I've moved on, grown older. No reason, no ill will. But, hey, seeing them out there running those 3-point guards in Bledsoe, Thomas, and Dragic, I am impressed. They are as fun as anybody. You got to love just fast-paced basketball. You wish that it would translate more into winning basketball, but it really just hasn't over the years, not since the Showtime Lakers that I can recall. I mean, you had slow down Bulls. You had a lot of teams that play half-court sets, but the Spurs kind of get up and down a little more than they used to, but, nobody's out here showtiming in the championship, not since the 80s, and you just wish that it did a little more, because it's fun to watch. It really is. So the Suns are out here. They're small and they're speedy, and I told you in the NBA preview, I wanted to see how it worked. I wanted to see if it worked, and so far it has. It kind of works the way you would expect, like, some guy, one of them coming off the bench. I think Thomas is the one coming off the bench right now. Dragic and Bledsoe start. One's bringing the ball up the court. One's off the ball. When one's not performing well that night, the other guy comes and picks up the slack. It's worked very well for them so far this season. So it's worked out. Jeff Hornacek's out there. He's coaching that team. So it's really going to be problems out there in the Pacific Division. I got a couple more observations after the break here. I'm just going to go ahead, take a quick break, have you listen to some more Broken Reality before I get to my own Broken Reality that I'm talking about with these NBA highlights. But in the meantime, you're listening to the Raymond Simms Show on Spreaker.com and the Coliseum Sports Network. nearing the bottom of the second hour here at Raymond Simms Show on the Coliseum Sports Network. I don't know if I said this off the top. I'm so focused on trying to make sure I got all my football stuff in. Happy Veterans Day to all the veterans out there. Very much appreciative of what you do or have done for this country with your military service. I wish you guys the best that are still out there in the field, and I thank you guys that have already served this country well. My parents themselves, they are both Air Force veterans, so it hits home definitely for people that are committing their service to this country. Got a couple of friends that are is in the reserves, and I got some other ones in the military too. Just acquaintances that I've known that are also in the military. Just a lot of people doing a lot of good things, and this is your day. Every day is your day, of course, but you know how holidays work. Just every day can be your day, but there's this one day in particular where it's like, hey, if you haven't been given the veterans love, be sure to at least remember today at least. But to move forward, I was talking about in the previous segment just about some observations I had from my binge watching of NBA highlights. I have always thought about binge watching stuff for a very long time. I have the subscription package to WNBA Live Access, which was only $12. It was such a deal. 204 regular season games in the playoffs for $12. Man, I got to get in on that. I only watched the first 5 games of the whole season. I still want to do it so bad. But, it's 2-hour games. Like, that's going to take forever. And I have a very weird paranoia that they eventually cut off, like, the ability to access live access at some point during the off season. So, I'm worried that I'll be too deep into the season and trying to watch every game. And then, boom, I won't be able to get on and watch live access anymore. But I don't know. I will, I'll have to get into it at some other time. Also, what else am I trying to binge watch in terms of sports? There's a lot of sports stuff that I want to binge watch. Oh, to study for the college basketball stuff. Oh, there's so much just games that I want to watch. Just games. Just things like that. But working on my UBC stuff have kind of kept me from binge watching. Once I get back on track with that, maybe I can see how my schedule is looking in terms of watching all the things. I don't know, I'm weird like that. I love on-demand. I love the idea of on-demand sports. It's the greatest thing since sliced bread, in my opinion, and yet I don't utilize it nearly enough. What is wrong with me? Tisk, tisk. I have my notes here, and I veered off of them because I was talking about the Kobe and the Suns. That's not on my notes at all. But here is another team I should be showing love to, the 76ers. Now, I know yesterday I pointed out the obvious. I had a very hot take that the 76ers would not have a good season. I know, just cutting edge. I went against the grain on that one. But looking at the highlights, they can still be fun to watch. They weren't fun to watch in their 102-88 loss to Toronto over the weekend, so there will be blowouts. But it seems like, at least in the early juncture of the season, while the team lacks talent, they have a lot of heart. Something that a certain local football team does not have, but that's neither here nor there. The 76ers are coming out there. They come out there to play. There's Tony Rotten. It's not Rotten. It's Tony Roten. Why would he want to be Tony Rotten? That would not be good. Tony Roten. Shooting guard out of Washington. He is the only 20-point scorer on the team. He's been given the green light to just go out there and play to his heart's content, and he is trying to deliver the best of his abilities. He's not just scoring. He's not just out there putting up all the shots. He's trying to make the good passes and find open teammates and stuff. I'm sure maybe it might have a little self-interest going on, but for the most part, Tony Roten's just out there doing the best he can. It's kind of fun to watch, even though it can be very inefficient and very hard to watch from a percentage standpoint. Brandon Davies, BYU player, he got caught up in a controversy at BYU. That's still the only way that I remember him, but he's out there doing the best that he can. Nerlens Noel, the rookie, he just sustained an injury. I don't know how long he's out. I haven't heard that he's out for the season, so he'll probably be back soon. But an unfortunate injury. I think he rolled his ankle or something in a recent game. But the one guy that kind of makes watching the 76ers totally worth it is undrafted rookie out of Clemson, KJ McDaniels. This child is throwing it down. all over the place. Saw him on a fast break, and he threw it down. He was attacking the basket, and he got the Wells Fargo Center up on their feet. I think it was. I think they played the Heat at home. I watched all these highlights and I don't even remember all the games. It's just crazy. But KJ McDaniels is very impressive. With the way that he'll probably disappoint. I don't know. It takes a lot to determine how creative you can be in terms of dunking the ball. But otherwise, the 76ers, they have some hope. Like, maybe you can, I think they might be worthwhile watching. For all the struggling that they do, they might actually, be pretty okay to, see them develop as a team. Because Brett Brown, hey, he's not just a lame duck coach. He has them playing up tempo. He has them shooting and developing just as well as any other up-and-coming team. Hey, maybe Sam Hinkie might be onto something. Never know. What else do I have here? Nothing else related to the highlights per se, but I do want to give a shout out to one more team, and that is the Sacramento Kings. The Kings are definitely impressing, at least here early on in the NBA season. I mean, you know how these things go. There's certain teams that are doing well now, but they could very well start tailing off towards the end of the season. In the course of an 82-game season, and the way basketball works, the cream eventually rises to the top. But at least in their first 7 games, the Sacramento Kings are 5-2, and DeMarcus Cousins seems to finally have it together in terms of his maturity, and having that maturity mixed with his talent level. I just wonder that if the Kings do hit a rough patch, because, no team, even the best teams, aren't above hitting a rough patch, if he can maintain his composure. He did an interview with NBA Action that was kind of chronicling his development from the FIBA World Cup up into this season, and some of the changes that he feels that he has made. You can't help but wonder. You can't help but wonder if he's going to hang on to his maturity. That's not what I meant to say. What I meant to say was that it did seem like he's somebody who genuinely seems like he changed. Like, he's taken inventory of who he was and what he wants to be. Like, it seems like he's really going to turn the corner. Even if the Kings start to struggle, I think that he could be a very, good, strong person in the locker room that people can turn to in terms of trying to get the team to turn around those fortunes if they do happen to tail off at any point in this season. But as of right now, the Sacramento Kings are 5-2. They're 5th in the Western Conference, and that is they are off to pretty much their best start since 2001. I know Kings fans remember that fondly. The Kings were title contenders back then with Vlade Divac and Jason Williams and Chris Webber and all of them. So that was a very good time, and it's good that DeMarcus Cousins and this clan are able to harken back to those days for the Sacramento fans that for a while thought they weren't going to have this team anymore. It's also funny because it was back in those days, the 2001 season and all of that, where one of the Maloofs, he said in an interview, because there was rumors that the Kings were going to move way back then too. But one of the Maloofs was like, we're going to be here for 1,100 years. We're going to be here forever. And then they tried to move the team to Seattle. So they were obviously full of stuff. But they're gone now, and they have Vivek Ranadive. He's an outside thinker, that's for sure, and he is doing what he can to see if he can turn this franchise around, and he's done a decent job so far. So more power to the Kings, and hopefully they can sustain this. Like, I just want them to at least fight for a playoff spot. They don't have to go to the championship, but I just want this team to get it together for once, because it seems like their star player is really trying to make a difference for his squad. I'll have more NBA stuff and anything else I can think of on the other side. It's the Raymond Simms Show on Spreaker.com and the Coliseum Sports Network. Welcome back to the Raymond Simms Show on Spreaker.com and the Coliseum Sports Network. We're streaming live on Spreaker. We're on demand at the Coliseum Sports Network, and we'll be on demand on Spreaker shortly after the completion of this episode. Now, if you've been following this show, you may notice a lot of the musical interludes that I have in place of commercial breaks. If your business wants to put their advertisement in between one of those musical interludes, be sure to contact me at coliseumsportsnet@gmail.com, and you can put your product or your business out in front of a very large worldwide audience for an up-and-coming sports show. So if you want to consider doing business, email me, coliseumsportsnet@gmail.com. Be more than glad to help you out there. We're heading down the home stretch here, final half hour of the Raymond Simms Show. It's been an interesting day, I know. Football, a third of it was Bears, at least in this 90-minute segments. Had Monday Night Football. Was talking about my binge watching of highlights last night with no regrets. I thought it was great. I thought it was awesome. I have no problem doing it. Not going to do it again. What I'm going to try to do moving forward is just watching the highlights at the end of each night. I really don't want to stay up for hours just watching highlights again, especially considering the workload that I put on myself in terms of this show and then also my website as well. So I got a lot of stuff to do. So I'm not trying to spend a whole bunch of time watching a bunch of highlights, back to back to back to back. But one other thing I'm trying to binge watch, I just remembered because I wasn't sure what it was when I started off the segment at the top of the hour. The Blackhawks. I've been meaning to watch all their highlights for all of their games that they've had so far. Apparently, from what I hear, it's been a bit of a roller coaster. They had a losing streak recently. I don't know if they're in the midst of it right now, but I could find out if I watch the highlights for each of the games that they've played. I think, what are they? Are they at probably game number 15 now? I'm not sure, but like I said, I should find that out probably. What I want to cover here in the penultimate segment of the show is two games from last night involving three Central Division teams. Sorry to get Midwest-centric. I guess I got a Midwest bias. But it seemed like they were important games in terms of storyline. So the first one I'll talk about is the Bulls and the Pistons. 102-91 victory. Pretty cut and dried win. You got the Bulls, who have been pretty much at the top of their game. They've had a couple of losses to a Celtics team that caught them by surprise and a Cavaliers team that was just better on that particular night, completely beat them up on the boards, that's for sure. Tonight, they take on one of the worst shooting teams, if not the worst shooting team. I think they are the worst in the NBA. Didn't get much better, really. Maybe a little bit, because they were shooting about 40%. They shot 42.5%, so I guess it did get a little better for them, but not by much. Pistons, that is, shot 42.5% and are the worst shooting team in the league, probably still. But the Bulls, they even though their field goal percentage was just below average as well, at 44.3%, they went out there and they played. This was, I think, the first time, if I'm not mistaken, or maybe the first time since the first game, that we have essentially seen the 10-man rotation that Tom Thibodeau is most likely going to go with for the most of the season, as long as everybody's healthy, and absolutely for the playoffs. So you got Noah at center. You have Gasol at the 4. You have Mike Dunleavy as the small forward. You have Jimmy Butler, the shooting guard. You have Derrick Rose, the point guard. And then off the bench, you have Gibson, you have Mirotic, you have McDermott, you have Brooks, and you have Heinrich. The whole gang was there. And Snell and Nazir Muhammad and Etuan Moore, they didn't even have to play, because everybody was there. Everybody that needed to be there was there. All good attendance, all thumbs up for everybody. 5 Bulls scored double figures, led by Derrick Rose's 24. He also doled out 7 assists, and he got a steal and a couple of rebounds. He looked good. Thumbs up. You can't see my thumbs up because this is radio, but thumbs up. He looked good. He did hit 24 points with 20 shots, but he's leading the team in scoring, and he's doing what he needs to do. So one thing at a time here. We'll work on the efficiency later. Just glad he's out there. Glad he was able to sustain 32 minutes. Hope that he can be out there for an extended amount of time. Just please I'm kind of tired of him sitting out, even if it's kind of like for Popovichian reasons, where you're just setting him out just to make sure he doesn't get hurt and he's preserved. Even though he's not all that old, I prefer that he just goes out there and plays well to the best of his abilities instead of having to sit out. Hello, welcome back to the Raymond Simms Show on the Coliseum Sports Network. I noticed that my server cut out again. That is on my end. That is not yours. Everything should be fine with your connection. You don't have to lose your mind or pull out any wires. I was talking about the Bulls and Pistons. I don't know, like what happened earlier in the show. I don't know at what point it cut out, but I was basically saying that the Bulls did very well, that their lineup looked very good, that they were finally out there too deep as they were intended to be, and that the Pistons went out and did not look very good, and that you had bad performances from Andre Drummond and from Brandon Jennings, and that Josh Smith also, while he didn't have the worst performance, he was very inefficient out there on the floor, and that Stan Van Gundy has a lot of work cut out for him. Also, at one point, I don't know if you heard it or if it cut out during the time, I was surprised that Joel Anthony was on the roster, but then I quickly remembered that Joel Anthony was brought to Detroit in a trade that sent Will Bynum to Boston, and he was subsequently cut. So I had a bit of a senior moment there, but remember, possibly during or at least before the loss in connection. The other game I wanted to talk about, and I'm actually just going to cut out early here, maybe, because I want to cover everything I wanted to cover, bad connection or not. The Pelicans go to Cleveland. They fall to Cleveland 118 to 111. Anthony Davis against LeBron. I was just talking about in the previous segment that Anthony Davis looks really good. He looked good in the NBA highlights that I was watching last night, and he looks like he could definitely be an MVP candidate very soon. He had 27 points and 14 rebounds and 3 blocks and 4 steals, and he just looked amazing all by himself, and he wasn't even the highest scorer on his team. That was Ryan Anderson off the bench with 32. Can somebody ring him up for most improved or sixth man or something? Consider him if Jamal Crawford doesn't still have the spot. There was a couple of 32s for Cleveland, and they both came from, you guessed it, LeBron James and Kyrie Irving. I had got on during the loss of connection. I know it was at that point. I was going on about Brandon Jennings and the fact that he's a scoring point guard. He had 8 assists on that night, and I was kind of getting on his case because he also went 3 of 11. And I was saying that if you're a scoring point guard, you have to be able to do both. Jennings did not do both, so I gave him a hard time for that. In the same way I gave Kyrie Irving a hard time for scoring a lot of points but not passing. Apparently that's a thing of the past here with Kyrie. 32 points. 9 assists. That's above what I expect from a scoring point guard. My range is 3 to 6 for a scoring point guard because while you do need to distribute the ball and set up the offense, it is on you to score, usually if you're a scoring point guard. 9, great with me. But of course, LeBron James seems to outdo him. He has 10 assists. LeBron James messed around, got a triple-double, 32 points, 12 rebounds, 10 assists. Yawn, another amazing game for LeBron James. So it was just a good game. Maybe I can watch it while being cheap and looking at all the individual plays in the stats section. I don't know, but it was still a pretty good game between an up and coming star and an already established star. Just a good one, just a good game, good matchup to come in the middle of the season. You gotta love those, and it really helps you understand what makes the regular season worthwhile in terms of entertainment value. Of course, we know why it's actually worthwhile. You got to figure out the seeding for the postseason. But if you want to get existential about it and wonder why the playoffs are even a thing, well, you're on your own with that. So those were the 2 games I at least wanted to point out here. There's some games tonight. Spurs and Warriors tonight on NBA TV. That should be a good one. So I'll probably be keeping my eyes out for that and tell you about it tomorrow, technology willing. But, technology willing, as long as it doesn't break down. I'm going to have to look into some stuff, some IT-related stuff to figure out why stuff on my side is so unreliable. So, it's on me. I'm going to be accountable for it because I'm not Mark Trestman. I'm going to be accountable for what is happening on my side in terms of my internet connection. First time in the very short tenure of this show that the connection has gone out twice. That's a new one. So I think whatever problem is going on is clearly getting worse. Two more odds and ends I want to cover before I go ahead and head out here. I was alluding to, I think it was yesterday. I mean, there's only been one other day this week so far. I want to do an NBA 2K association. Once all the dust settles on trying to get my website and my show off the ground here, I got to get back to the game, man. I got to start putting the controller in my hands. Last night I went ahead and played a game of 2K. I was the Kings. I played against the Lakers. Got a good hard-fought win there at Arco, or at Sleep Train Arena. So, hey, it felt pretty good to get back into that. Got to get into that. Want to run an association mode. I keep calling it franchise because I'm kind of programmed from the NBA Live days, the old ones, not the current generation of it. Still trying to figure out a team. I was considering the Nuggets because I talked about them yesterday. Watching the highlights, I thought about the Sixers, but I'm not really trying to do a rags to riches story. I just want a team that's below average that I can build in my own image. So the Nuggets seemed good, but I don't know. I don't think they necessarily fit my style of play. Which is perimeter oriented, really, but with like perimeter players attacking the basket or shooting threes, and then you got really good rebounders down low. That's my style of play. Maybe if I get better at post moves and attacking the basket, maybe my game will be more well rounded, but not right now. I don't want the Kings because I don't like the arena. I wish you can make your own arena. That would have been okay. I don't want a powerhouse team, though a team like the Warriors just seems so tempting. Don't want to pick the Bulls. That's too on the nose. You see the thought process here. I'm all over the place. If you got any suggestions, hit me up at Simms Coliseum on Twitter. I'd be glad to hear them. And the last thing I want to talk about is baseball, but only for a short bit. Not really much of importance. I happened to see the Japan series for like a moment last night or early this morning. It was on TV. I had no clue that this was a thing that was happening. Maybe it's the first time it's happening. Maybe it's always been going on. MLB All-Stars go over to Japan. I don't know if they're playing. Like the game they played, it was a combination of two Japan League teams. I don't know if that's it or if they're playing a series of teams or if they're just playing those two teams and like in a best of 7 series. No clue. But I saw it was on, and as much as I miss baseball, I didn't really catch it. But I will say I think that the atmosphere at Japanese baseball games is awesome. I have known for a while now that if the type of atmosphere it is kind of akin to college basketball here, or college football, or soccer anywhere, or pretty much soccer anywhere in the world. I think that's really cool. I wish we kind of brought that to baseball here in America. I think maybe more people would be into it if people got more involved. All that saying, I don't know. Like if I go to a baseball game, I don't know if I would necessarily stand up. But to see people doing that or to be in the middle of that, more power to them. I think it would be just very awesome. But I think that's an atmosphere that's akin to certain things, but unmatched in a lot of ways. I just think it's so cool. And it's kind of interesting that different cultures celebrate baseball in different ways. You know, you get the soccer-like atmosphere in Japan and probably in some other countries, but here it's a lot more low-key. It's laid back. It's, just enjoying the game for what it is and kind of just keeping score if you're good at keeping a scorecard. But yeah, I just noticed it on TV. Don't ask me what's going on. For all the stuff I know, I have no clue what is happening with the Japan series. that's going to do it here. I apologize for the technical difficulties during today's show. I will do my best to see if I can get those fixed as soon as possible so that we can enjoy a full-fledged 2 hours, or more like an hour 55. Any prospective advertisers, don't worry. I'm going to fix these so that if you do business with me, and you can contact me at coliseumsportsnet@gmail.com, that your advertisement or any reads that you send me will not be cut off by stupid technology. But I do thank you all for listening all the same. All the followers that I've been getting on Spreaker.com, I appreciate all of you. All the appreciation that I've been getting from different social media sources. I thank you all for supporting me and the Coliseum Sports Network. And I will continue to just come out here, do my best, and talk about stuff and things as you get through your day. But until tomorrow, I am Raymond Simms. This has been the Raymond Simms Show on the Coliseum Sports Network. Holla at me. 1.